Guyana continues to work towards embracing the European Union's Forest Law Enforcement, Governance and Trade Action Plan. The plan sets out a range of measures available to the EU and its member states to tackle illegal logging around the world. As the country moves towards entering a voluntary partnership agreement, or VPA, with the EU, significant steps are being taken to strengthen systems and bring stakeholders up to date with the new measures. In this episode, you will learn more about the requirements and technical specifications for the FLEGT licenses and the Guyana Timber Legality Assurance System, GTLAS.
Under the Voluntary Partnership Agreement, export of forest products to countries within the European Union will require a FLEGT license.
A FLEGT license guarantees that timber from a voluntary partnership agreement country has been harvested, processed, and exported in accordance with national laws.
FLEGT license is an official document that allows the easy access of timber from Guyana, or a timber producing country, into the European Union.
It also provides you that green lane access to the European market, whereby they will lend greater credibility to that shipment, recognizing that there's a whole host of systems and mechanisms in the background that would have assured the legality of the timber from its origin. So that document is essentially putting everything into perspective for each shipment that leaves Guyana. And it helps greatly with the marketability of the timber also, because the world over will look for FLEGT license, especially within the European Union, they look for FLEGT license. And Guyana positioning itself for FLEGT readiness and being licensed to issue this sort of documentation will gain greater attention from the customer base that looks for this kind of due diligence.
And the current system that we are using today is a system that existed with Guyana Forestry Commission. It's not something new. We want to put something that is workable, that is achievable, so that the community forestry organizations within Guyana would be able to fit into that. And it must be workable and achievable. That is what we are working towards. We are not making anything complicated. It's the same system, but what we are doing here is trying to regularize it and ensure that that system works, and it's a standard that we will go by.
The FLEGT license covers a range of forest products.
The FLEGT license is intended to cover all shipments in relation to timber products listed under Annex 1 or the product scope that will be going to the European Union, all 28 countries.
The obligation of having a FLEGT license to export forest products to the EU is not intended to replace existing requirements, but is merely an addition.
A FLEGT license is in addition to. So what has always been in existence, whatever documents has to be obtained, still remains. You still have to get an export license that is issued at the level of the GFC, which allows you to export timber products for 1 calendar year. That license still remains in place. So in addition to that license, you still require a FLEGT license for the products that are heading to the EU.
The FLEGT licensing authority in a VPA partner country issues FLEGT licenses for consignments of timber or timber products exported to the EU.
The Guyana Forestry Commission will be the agency that issues FLEGT licenses.
It is a license that, for all intents and purposes, will be issued by it is going to be issued by Guyana. At this point, the discussions have tended towards it being issued by the GFC, because we have, in many ways, been dealing with the exports of timber and timber products. And we think the National Technical Working Group feels that it would be a lot easier for the process, time and all these things being considered, that let one agency who is already doing all the other checks of the products to be exported, let that agency be the one who issues the FLEGT license for the products. If replacement licenses are required, so if a license maybe get misplaced, there may be a cost, but it would not be anything exorbitant, just maybe to cover the offsetting cost of the materials itself that is used in the production of the license, because it will be the paper may be very specific, the ink may be very specific, so as to which are security measures.
Over time, whatever cost we associate with any new requirement becomes operationalized, and we feel that the market of itself, the market access that we will create, should offset that maybe additional cost. But there is some administrative cost which we cannot run away from, because the agencies responsible now have to lend some time and resources in the verification process, in the audit process. GFC of itself, we expect that, because they now have maybe a department looking at this primarily, so there is some cost, and we expect that we will have to offset it some way or the other. But I think it will set itself out in the long run, because of you have more market access.
FLEGT licenses will be valid for a limited time. Specific requirements are given to handle potential changes in the volume of timber being exported.
The validity period could be as much as maybe 6 months, depending on one of the things that we have thought about in how long it should be valid was how long some of the other documents also are going to be valid for. So the timber marketing certificate valid for 60 days. We also have to consider shipping time. If time is lost, so a license is issued but no fault of the person, they can't get it to be shipped. So I would say maybe 6 months. Again, trying to, as far as possible, accommodate all the things that maybe that could go wrong or maybe change from when a license is issued to when you actually get a chance to ship that product. But again, I think just to note that, because I think with that many people may think that in that length of time, you will give people an opportunity to tamper with or do something with the license. But what is important to note is once a license is issued, we will have a record of it, that it has been issued, and we will also, as part of the system, know when that license would have been utilized. So we will know up to the very last point that the shipment still hasn't left Guyana, and of course that information will be coming from the customs authority, which would be the final point of checking to say yes, that produce has officially left the country.
There is room for an extension to be done if a request is made within a reasonable time. And since the annex is not in its final stage, there's still room for suggestions as to whether the period should be longer or shorter.
There are possibilities of licenses being amended, but that has to be, for that process to happen, it has to be communicated between the licensing authority in Guyana and the port authority in whatever country or destination that project is going to. So if a license is once it is changed, it can be transferred as such. Now there may be a need for amending a license. Let's say a name or maybe a volume may have changed. Let's say something got damaged, no fault of the person, but they want the remainder of that shipment to still go. You can then amend that license, but that is not something you can just take a pen and maybe just initial that you did it. It has to be a process, because it means, because how the system works is once a license is issued here, it is also communicated to the EU that this license was issued. So they're also expecting, each license will have a unique number. So that number, let's say the number is 11234, license number 12334 has been issued by the Forestry Commission in Guyana. and therefore they are now on the lookout to receive that license. So up until that time, if that license then gets amended, whatever information was sent to them would also have to be amended so that the license 1, 2, 3, 4 it exists, but it now says this, and this is what has changed. So it'll still come, but you'll understand the amendments before they arrive. So when you see them, it's not new to you in that sense.
Changes can happen. The market situation, along with the logistics, is very dynamic. So it's something which I think we would want to look into in more detail. But we are aware that it's something that we need to address as a very vital part of the process, because we do not want to give any market in the European region the indication that there could be inconsistencies.
When you are reasonably confident that what the volume is will not change, we are looking to then issue the FLEGT license. So one of the things that'll be done a little differently from the sort of traditional Forestry Commission customs export is that it comes to the Forestry Commission, it then goes to the Customs Authority, but we are not looking to issue that FLEGT license just yet when you come to the Forestry Commission. When we're going to issue that license is when you go to the Customs Authority and it has been cleared for shipment. So we are now more confident that what is on that document will not be changed. Then that stakeholder comes back to us and indicates that this is what is going to actually be shipped. And then we issue the license. So you're more likely to get it right. Now, as I said, there may be situations where volume may have to be changed. When that happens, then a request is made to the Forestry Commission that these are the amendments that need to happen. Those changes, once it is justifiable, will be made. That it will be then communicated to the port that is receiving it in the EU that this change has happened, and then that shipment can then be allowed to leave.
Once verified as legal, Guyana will issue FLEGT licenses for timber products destined for the EU market.
At the heart of each voluntary partnership agreement, or VPA, is a timber legality assurance system, which verifies that wood products conform to national laws.
Basically, this is what everything is based on under this agreement. It is Guyana saying to the EU and to the world at large that we have a system in relation to the harvesting and production of timber and timber products, which we can verify at every stage what is the source of the product, and that every step of the way the legal requirements have been met.
Some factors are considered as breaches of the legality assurance system. A breach could see an exporter being denied a FLEGT license.
The legality definition is comprised of a number of laws. So the Environmental Protection Agency will have laws related to the environment. The Labor Act contains laws related to labor, and that is captured in the legality definition. The Revenue Authority, they have their own laws, and some parts of their laws are captured in the legality definition. So the breaches and the penalties vary depending on what is the breach, and under which law the individual will be penalized. So there are breaches, there are opportunities for breaches, and there are penalties associated with the breaches. But each penalty is related to which section of the legality definition the breach occurred.
You want the buyer of your timber to have that assurance, to be assured that whatever products is coming to his or her market has met some standard of checks and balances that gives them the assurance that it is, at least for this agreement, it is legal, it is credible. And when we say legality, we're not just saying legality we can prove legality. So the legality assurance system is not just about, it is a system whereby you're not only saying the timber that is coming to your market is legal, but that legality can be proven. It can be verified as legal.
Under the TLAS and under the regulations, the breaches would, and under the Forest Act as well, the breaches would range from fines. I think in some cases there may be imprisonment also involved, seizure of the timber. So it would vary in accordance with the breaches.
If a breach occurs, it will be identified and addressed. So it is not a case where a breach can happen and the system not detect it. And I think, they can be assured that even if a breach has occurred, under Guyana's laws, it has been addressed. And I think it's important to point out, because I heard, some people think that if timber has been confiscated or a breach has occurred, it should not be allowed to be exported. And that is one view. But again, because our country's laws makes provisions for what has been termed a breach to be remedied, then what it means is that breach has been addressed, dealt with, and there's nothing preventing the timber from becoming part of what we call the supply chain or being able to now go to Europe. So what they can be assured of is that when they get that produce, even if it was a produce that may have been found in breach of something, the system identified it and it was addressed based on the country's laws, and it is now legal coming to you.
The purpose of the legality assurance system is to provide a reliable means to distinguish between legal and illegal produced forest products. GTLAS, therefore, plays an integral role in the VPA process.
The voluntary partnership agreement becomes binding on partner countries once it is ratified.
There are penalties associated with Guyana not meeting the requirements, or Guyana not upholding what they say they would do in the GTLAS. So the GTLAS provides the framework and how Guyana say the system operates and how the oversight is done, and that is the assurance that the European Union is looking for.
A number of factors are being taken into consideration for the development of the Guyana Timber Legality Assurance System.
This is the most complicated part of the voluntary partnership agreement. The GTLAS is unfolded from a number of pieces of documents that existed previously. In many instances, our stakeholders were not aware of all these documents or all these requirements. Recently, there were consultations done in Linden, Lethem, Bartica, even Region 1, Hosroro, Mabaruma, to inform stakeholders of the different components of the legality definition and also the different components of the GTLAS, just so they can be on stream.
In addition to complying with forest laws, exporters and companies involved in the shipment of forest products to the EU will now have to ensure that all aspects of their operations are legal.
One of the focuses of the entire VPA is to ensure that not just the actual forest sector regulations are complied with, but that there is also a social aspect and an environmental aspect that is catered for. So in relation to the social aspect, the focus is really on the treatment of employees. And it covers NIS, discrimination, the statutory age limit, minimum wage. All of these things have to be complied with. Because if you're not complying with that, then you're operating illegally. You may not be operating illegally in relation to the forest sector, but you're operating illegally as a businessman or a company.
if we see it as important, and clearly it is, it is enshrined in law that these are things that ought to be happening. So we should see it as, yes, if NIS is required, let us get to the place as a country where it is required and it is complied with. Failing to comply with it will mean that your produce will be deemed illegal and you cannot export it. Under the current agreement, or what we're looking to agree on with the EU, that is what it will mean. If you are deficient in some of these areas, it will mean that your produce will not be exported.
Part of the legality definition is GRA compliance. This is a requirement by law. This GT-LAS provides an opportunity to say, this is how you go about getting GRA compliance. This is when GFC will check for it, and so forth.
To fully implement measures that would provide for the establishment of a legality assurance system, several steps are being taken to upgrade existing infrastructures throughout various agencies.
One of the things we recognize is that because the GFC is not the authority on a number of requirements for these stakeholders. So, for example, for someone who has a titled land, GFC is not the one who would have issued that title. So what it means is that we are not the authority. So, and similarly for NIS payments, GFC is not the one who controls the payments of NIS. So what it means is that the system has to be built in such a way that those agencies who are the authorities have to also be able to feed information into the licensing agency, which you say is going to be the GFC. So what it means is that those agencies and the GFC is going to have to sort of have a network where information can be fed from those agencies to the GFC system to say, yes, a stakeholder has been compliant with their NIS requirements. Or let's say in the case of an environmental permit, the Environmental Protection Agency is the authority. Now, you may bring a permit to me as a stakeholder, because one of the things these systems have to be, as I mentioned, is that there has to always be a constant level of check and balance, of verification. So even if you come to me as a stakeholder with an NIS, let's say compliance, it says you have been compliant. Now, you are coming as a stakeholder, but what the system really should be doing and will in fact do is we will check, we the licensing authority will check with the authority, which will be the NIS themselves or the EPA themselves, to say you need to give us some indication, some assurance that you in fact did issue this stakeholder with a permit, or you in fact did give them a compliance. So when we get the document, we are aware, we are checking it as you have presented it as a stakeholder, but we also have already received information from the authorities that you in fact have a genuine permit or a genuine compliance as issued by the agencies. And again, as I said, these are all systems that you're saying to give that assurance that we talk about, because you want everybody who's buying timber to be assured that when you get a piece of timber, it has met and gone through a number of systems that have been verified.
Operators might find it a bit scary to hear about all of this, but I want to tell you that as an operator in the field, it's not, if you want to be part of the international community, this is a natural requirement now, and we are trying to meet our own national requirements, not international requirements. I think that also needs to be stressed. We are deciding what we want to comply or establish as compliance requirement, and that's why we have to do it in partnership with all stakeholders.
People are skeptical in the first case. They must be, because I said you can't get 100%, percent of acceptance what this is, but it is going to take some time, and it's going to gradually bed into people. Once they see the benefits, it's going to build on that. That is going to build, and that is how it's going to work. It is something that we are going into very gradually, so it is being accepted by the entire country.
Be sure to join us again next time as we continue our journey towards improving transparency and accountability in the management of Guyana's forest resources.